The LH Torana would mark the beginning of the Torana's third generation and the introduction of a larger design, but despite its increased dimensions, it still remained compact by mid-1970s standards. Now bear in mind that at this time, GM's global benchmark for small car design was the Chevrolet Vega, which brings us to the Holden Gemini, another compact car and part of the T-Car program. So, what if the 1974 Holden LH Torana had simply been a larger version of the Holden Gemini, but without a V8? Well, if things had gone the wrong way, this could have happened. Development of the LH Torana actually began way back in January 1970 and would be caught between two competing visions within GM. One proposal was backed in the US and aimed to enlarge GM's T-Car platform, while the other advocated for an all-Australian design based on the LC and LJ models. GM's T-Car program was designed to develop a global small car and would go on to include models like the Opel Kadett, Vauxhall and Chevrolet Chevette, Pontiac T1000 and the Isuzu and Holden Geminis. Then there was Project XP949, a proposal to stretch the T-Car's wheelbase to accommodate the 6-cylinder version and aimed at replacing the 4-cylinder Toranas in Australia. This initiative was GM's first true global project and would be overseen by General Motors Overseas Operations, or GMOO. GMOO oversaw Vauxhall, Opel and Holden and pushed for the expanded T-Car concept. Since Holden reported to GMOO, its executives would have to factor in GMOO's global strategy. It would be GMOO who aimed to extend the T-Car's wheelbase to 99 inches for 6-cylinder LH Toranas, just 1 inch shorter than the existing LC or LJ. Under this strategy, it would be the new T-Car that would fully replace the 4-cylinder Toranas. This approach provided significant advantages. Holden saved both time and money, models share components for greater efficiency, and GMOO facilitate the adoption of the enlarged T-Car by other GM divisions, a win for everyone. While GMOO was under intense corporate pressure to make the T-Car program a success, the team at Holden had a completely different vision in mind for this project. In Holden's 1970 product planning documents, the LH Torana was initially proposed as a rebodied LCLJ, retaining the familiar 95.8 inch wheelbase for the 4-cylinder and 100 inches for the 6-cylinder. Its launch was set for October 1973, and there were no plans at that time for a V8 option. Like the LC and LJ series, the LH Torana lineup was planned to include both 2- and 4-door sedans, but as history now shows, that didn't happen. Also, in an effort to enhance interior space, this car was earmarked to be widened by 1 inch. Another key goal was to maximise component and panel interchangeability, so reducing costs. Initially, product planners aimed to phase out left-hand drive cars, but this decision would also later be overturned. The design team experimented with various body styles, including a ute, 2-door wagon and a fastback coupe. While these reached the prototype stage, none were ultimately put into production. Holden's design director, Joe Szymanski, who had overseen the styling of other Torana models, closely monitored Project XP949 alongside his newly appointed assistant design director Leo Pranu. Leo Pranu had also styled a Torana 10 years earlier, in fact, when he had designed the Vauxhall Viva, which would later transform into Australia's first Torana. His design drew inspiration from the Vauxhall FE Victor, an Opel Kadett based Gemini, reflecting his past work with both brands. Pranu sent Philip Smood, assistant chief designer, to Opel Germany, where initial styling was underway, to ensure the T-Car met Australian standards and to assess whether an upsized 6-cylinder version T-Car could work as a Torana. After visiting Opel, Philip Smood returned to Australia. Then in April 1970, he travelled to GM's design studios in Detroit, where he built a full-size clay model of a Torana-based T-Car. On the 1st of July 1970, GM's product review committee met to assess the T-Car at GM's design studios, but the LH Torana was not part of that evaluation, despite being photographed that day. Holden was likely already focused on its own design, with its role in the XP949 project shifting toward a smaller model rather than a direct Torana replacement. By August 1970, GMOO had lost interest in a larger T-Car, while behind the scenes it would be Holden's senior team who successfully convinced GM executives to approve an all-Australian Torana, showcasing their confidence and technical capabilities. If Holden's executives had failed to sway GM's management, the all-Australian LH Torana, a car designed designed, engineered and built in Australia by Australians for Australians might never have made its mark on the roads and racetracks of Australia. This decision gave Holden two distinctly Australian models, the HQ and LH, setting it apart from Opel and Vauxhall, who did not receive similar privileges. It was a major vote of confidence in Holden's vision, allowing them to shape vehicles specifically for local conditions and preferences. As plans evolved, Holden reconsidered the LH Torana as more than just a rebodied LCLJ, initially opting for a 105-inch wheelbase to improve its interior space, plus also adding a V8 option to the lineup. While GM approved the V8, they resisted the wheelbase, fearing it would make the car too long. Despite Holden's argument that short overhangs would keep proportions in check, Detroit insisted on a 101.9-inch wheelbase, so reducing rear seat space. With the dimensions and engine choices finalised, the design team now shifted its focus to refining the details. Holden's vision was to recreate a modern-day equivalent of the 1963 to 1965 V8s with a compact yet spacious design, balancing handling and versatility for both families and performance enthusiasts alike. Before the VB Commodore Opel Record E platform, an earlier Opel Record model was considered for the Torana. However, its size made it impractical, and adapting it for local production would have been financially disastrous. During the LH Torana's development, a confrontational approach by a US engineer caused the delay of radial tune suspension plus key chassis upgrades until 1976, leaving the Torana's handling, braking and steering somewhat outdated. It would be American influence that shaped the Torana under a we know best approach, but its lasting impact led to Holden restructuring, fostering Australian offshore collaborations and so shielding the brand from Detroit's rigid hierarchy. It was US corporate management that hurt Holden's reputation, mirroring Chrysler Australia's similar struggles with the US. Despite a size increase and 82 kilograms of weight gain, the LH design accommodated everything from a 4-cylinder to a V8, though Detroit's influence would ultimately limit its performance potential. The rear styling featured large horizontal taillights, which remained mostly unchanged throughout development, although vertical taillights were briefly considered but were swiftly discarded. However, the front end design sparked considerable debate. Initially, it was intended to have a full-width grille divided by a chrome bumper bar, with its turn indicators wrapped into the front fenders, a style influenced by GM's American cars. The grille and bumper would go on to be influenced by the Chevrolet Vega, aligning with Bill Mitchell's GM corporate styling ethos. Also anticipating forthcoming impact bumper regulations, Holden fitted deep girder style bumpers which partially concealed the grille. It was in his final project before retirement that Reg Hall, chief body engineer, would focus on strength, durability and safety in the LH, and to maintain visual continuity, he added a trim piece below the bumper. The LH also marked Holden's first use of rectangular headlights, a departure from cost-saving round lights used in earlier models. However, Torana 4-cylinders and the SLR 5000, more of this later, were left out, making Holden the only manufacturer of the era to exclude headlight improvements from performance models. The dashboard design also underwent significant changes. Ken Follett, interior designer, originally created a modern sculpted fascia, but it was scrapped after Holden's managers reversed their decision to abandon left-hand drive markets. The replacement was a plain, flat, symmetrical fascia designed to fit both left and right-hand drive configurations. Ironically, the left-hand drive market never really materialised. Initially conceived as a two-door sedan, the V8 influence led to a major redesign and shifted to a hatchback, transforming it from a basic sedan into a sporty semi-fastback coupe with much lower roofline. After seeing the Chevrolet Vega hatchback prototype in the US, John Bagshaw, Director of Sales and Marketing, recognised its sales potential and insisted on re-engineering and restyling this coupe. This was due to its straight rear lid, which made the tail appear too pointed. Engineers resolved this by adding a kink at the base of the hatch panel. Unfortunately, this decision would delay release of the two-door model until the LX series in 1976. Early LH Torana mechanical and suspension testing was conducted using widened LC models, enlarged in width by 4 inches, which were also registered for road use. However, delays in development of the LH pushed the GMT car, specifically the Gemini, back by a year, prompting Holden to quickly develop the TA Torana in order to bridge this gap, which I previously covered in my LJ Torana video. The LH series would stand out as the first Holden to feature mechanical and body components entirely designed and manufactured in Australia, with the exception of the Opel-sourced 1900 4-cylinder engine. It was also remarkable for its diverse engine options, offering 4, 6 and 8 cylinder variants, a rarity in the global automotive market at that time, alongside models such as the 1970s Capris, plus MGBs and Mustangs. During this process, and due to American influence, Holden engineers struggled with many cost-cutting measures, such as drum brakes on lower spec models and less refined suspension, which led to both understeer and weaker steering feedback. On its March 1974 launch, the LH Torana was released in 3 trim levels. The S, SL and new SLR trim were just like its predecessors. The S stood for Sport, SL for Super Luxury, and the new SLR for Super Luxury Racing. Straight 6 and V8 cars had Torana letters spread separately across their front apron panel and boot lid, while 4-cylinder cars had the LJ TA style Torana badge on their rear panel between their tail lights and also on the left-hand lower grille, except +4s, but more of this later. The S and SL models used a 2-spoke HJ style steering wheel, with the SLR using a GTS 3-spoke. A new addition on all models was under the dash, a foot-operated parking brake with dash release. The 6-cylinder and V8 engines were painted HK engine red, while the Opel 1900 engines were painted black. All the 6s and 8s had rectangular headlights, while only the 4-cylinder and performance models had 7-inch round headlights. The S received a front bench seat with 9-inch drum brakes all round, fairly basic trim and instrumentation. The SL had front bucket seats, carpeting, walnut grain dash, clock, power front disc brakes and rubber bumper bar strips. To distinguish the 4-cylinder powered cars from the 6-cylinder and V8 cars, they received a distinctive style grille with vertical bars. The available LH engines were the 4-cylinder L16 Opel 1900 with Bendix-Stromberg single barrel downdraft carburettor, a compression ratio of 8.3:1 and pushing 112 horsepower. 6-cylinder options were the LD6 2850 with Bendix-Stromberg single barrel downdraft carburettor, compression ratio 9.4:1 and power output of 118 horsepower. Then the L20 3300 with Bendix-Stromberg single barrel downdraft carburettor, a compression ratio of 8.3:1 and power output of 135 horsepower. Both these were red motors and were carried over from the LJ and HQ, being called the 179 and 202 in the HQ series. The V8 options were the L32 4.2 litre with twin barrel Bendix-Stromberg carburettor, compression ratio of 8.75:1 and power output of 185 horsepower, plus the L31 5 litre with a 650 CFM Rochester 4 barrel quadrajet carburettor, a compression ratio of 9:1 and power output of 240 horsepower. And in the HQ series, these were known as the 253 and 308. Manual and automatic transmissions were all off the shelf, Holden components from the LJ and HQ models, with a 4-speed manual MC6 for the Opel 1.9, 3-speed manual M15 column change for the 2850 and 3300 6-cylinders, a 4-speed manual M20 for the 4.2 litre and optional for the 6-cylinders, plus a 4-speed manual M21 for 5 litre V8s. Both were floor shift, and there was also an optional automatic 3-speed M40. The S and SL were available in virtually all engine configurations, from 1900 Opel, 2850, 3300 and the 4.2 litre V8. Both S and SL ran on 4.5 JJ by 13 wheels. However, the S was shod with A78 L13 4-ply Blackwall tyres, whereas the SL was given B78 L13 4-ply Blackwall tyres. The SLR gained full instrumentation, rally striping and a 4-speed floor shift manual. Lesser models had a 3-speed column shift. The SLR came standard with the L20 3300 or 202 6-cylinder engine, while the L32 4.2 litre V8 or 253 and L31 5 litre V8 or 308 were also available options. In the early 1970s, Holden planned a V8 homologation special, the XU1 V8, designed to outperform the Falcon GTs with 300 horsepower, 4-wheel disc brakes, but due to the 1972 supercar scare forcing its cancellation, this concept was scrapped in favour of prioritising the mid-sized LH platform. Then came the LH SLR 5000. This vehicle in pre-production form was known as the XU2. Note, the XU2 tag was not used for the stillborn LJ V8 as is commonly thought and previously discussed in my video on the LJ series. Years after the supercar scare, Holden steered clear of the XU2 name, choosing a low profile identity to distance itself from the V8 XU1 controversy, and so opting for the SLR 5000 moniker. When fitted with the L31 5 litre V8, the SLR was rebadged as the SLR 5000, featuring large front and rear dams or spoilers and distinctive SLR 5000 decals on the front guards and rear spoiler, but without wheel arch flares or alloy wheels. But more of this shortly. Leo Pranou drew inspiration from Pontiac for the SLR 5000's rear spoiler, incorporating an inward curve and boot key access. Funny enough, a feature first seen on the XU1. His front spoiler design, influenced by HQ show cars like the Old Man Emu and 1971 HQ Monaro GTS 350 concept, finished in bright teal, featuring wide alloy wheels, a deep chin spoiler and ducktail rear spoiler. The SLR 5000 faced similar neglect, missing four-wheel disc brakes, halogen headlights and a Salisbury rear axle, despite their availability at the time. The SLR 5000 was only available with the M21 4-speed floor shift manual gearbox. Differentials were all Holden Banyo style units, mounted as in the LJ and HQ series, featuring 4 trailing arm links and coil springs for stability and handling. Running on 5.5 JJ by 13 wheels, optional on all other models, with wide BR70 H13 high-speed Blackwall radials, which did nothing to improve its handling flaws. The SLR 5000 featured a basic LH dashboard with interchangeable instrument and glove box sections, lacking a cockpit-style design. The modular design was initially planned for left-hand drive exports, but became unnecessary due to minimal overseas sales. Later, Holden realised that a centralised dashboard layout with instruments positioned on either side could have been more cost-effective, making the flat panel design redundant. Despite rival models featuring elaborate dashboards, Holden refused upgrades to the SLR 5000s, a result of vertical management that unfortunately left the car uncompetitive and expensive to correct. The SLR 5000 also had the option of factory-fitted racing stripes, which ran along the door bottoms and sills to enhance its sporty posture. During Australia's infrastructure boom, Holden marketed the LH Torana V8, particularly through Peter Brock, as the ideal long-distance car, but unfortunately SLR 5000 buyers faced its limitations, with rising crash rates among lone male drivers. At Holden's Lang Lang Proving Ground, GM's Director of International Operations, Alex Cunningham, encountered a critical incident while test driving an SLR 5000, where he tried to turn the car but it carried on. Wheels editor Peter Robinson recalls its manual gearbox, steering and bias ply tyres contributed to this near miss, a combination widely criticised by the magazine for its poor handling, which led to this spectacular loss of control, highlighting the car's inherent limitations. Unfortunately, it was the SLR 5000's small 5.5 JJ by 13 wheels and arches that prevented the wider Group C tyres being used, limiting its potential and stability. Its braking system of solid 10-inch front rotors with single piston calipers and 9-inch rear drums proved inadequate for racing. Worse, its large front spoiler obstructed airflow, increasing brake overheating. When the SLR 5000 was released, marketing hailed its speed and handling, but it still fell short of matching top-tier sports cars. On April 14th, 1974, Alan Grice, who was sponsored by Craven Mile Tobacco at the time, made history by giving Holden's new SLR 5000 its first racetrack appearance, running high-speed demonstration laps at Sydney's Amaroo Park Raceway. Launched that month, the car was so new that its homologation papers were still awaiting CAM's approval. 2 weeks later, at Oran Park's ATCC round, the SLR 5000 debuted, thrilling Holden's fans with minimal preparation. Grice qualified fourth and briefly ran second before brake failure sent him into the pits. Unfortunately, the small, non-ventilated front disc brakes overheated, and even removing the front spoiler couldn't resolve this issue. For race mechanics, the SLR 5000 proved a step back compared to the XU1. Its larger, heavier and boxy design made it less aerodynamic, hindering the potential advantage of its 240 horsepower L31 V8 engine. Its small 7-point sump posed a major racing risk as high-speed cornering increased oil starvation and potential engine failure. To secure funding and sponsorship, Holden dealer team, HDT, had signed a major sponsorship deal with tobacco giant Philip Morris, rebranding the team as Marlboro HDT. Meanwhile, Peter Brock was leading the ATCC in his Torana XU1, chasing his first title, but Grice's new V8 Craven Mile Torana was drawing a lot of attention. Marlboro, eager to counter the buzz, pushed HDT to act quickly. Under pressure from Marlboro, HDT boss Harry Firth had no choice but to field an SLR 5000. So at Surfers Paradise in May 1974, Alan Grice was joined by Peter Brock in another SLR 5000, entered by factory-backed HDT. Grice qualified fourth at Surfers, but suffered oil starvation from high G-force cornering cornering, leading to a catastrophic engine failure. With Peter Brock at the helm, the SLR 5000 was securing fast lap times, but HDT prioritised reliability for racing. To reduce strain on the gearbox and rear axles, HDT fitted XU1 race tyres and lightweight 13-inch Globe alloy wheels, also modifying the oil pickup and overfilling the sump to combat oil surge. Meanwhile, Brock secured pole and won flawlessly, effectively sealing his first ATCC title. Grice missed the final round in Adelaide, where Brock and HDT dominated with a flag-to-flag victory in the SLR 5000. HDT boss Harry Firth praised Peter Brock's ability to deliver fast yet controlled lap times, as his smooth cornering minimised oil surge, securing 2 dominant wins that pleased Marlborough and reassured Holden. Holden's Sydney press office recognised the disconnect between Australian expectations and the entrenched attitudes of key US staff at Fisherman's Bend. To compensate, they became adept at supplying press cars with top-tier tyre and suspension upgrades. For the July 1974 Wheels road test, the SLR 5000 supplied was fitted with Globe Bathurst alloy wheels and shod with Goodyear Grand Raleigh radial tyres, far superior to its standard 13-inch steel wheels. Yet Wheels wasn't deceived. Between April and the L34's debut in 1974, the Marlborough HDT and Craven Mild Racing teams campaigned the SLR 5000s in non-championship events across Australia, primarily to maximise exposure for their tobacco sponsors. Though never intended for racing, the standard SLR 5000 was briefly used to fulfil sponsorship obligations, as tobacco companies were a dominant force in the sport at that time. Like Grice's car, the Marlborough HDT SLR 5000 had a short-lived campaign, but it shared its components that would go on to be used in the L34, including its gearbox and rear axles, which made it a valuable track development tool. Released in August 1974 and designed explicitly for touring car racing, the L34 variant of the LH Torana was developed to meet Group C regulations. This meant modifications focused on durability and high performance capabilities, rather than luxury and daily usability. This wasn't the first time the L34 code been used, as it was used previously for the HK 327. External changes were subtle but distinctive, with bolt-on flared arches to accommodate the wider tyres and wheels required for Group C racing, and setting it apart from other Holden Toranas. A blackout treatment could also be ordered, a low gloss black finish, not matte, and being primarily tuxedo black, to the bonnet, window frames and rear panel, creating a light deadening coating. This could also be ordered with the Sport Stripe package, both of which were also available on the other SLR models as an option. At the heart of the machine was the L34, a Repco engineered 5-litre V8, an upgraded version of Holden's 308 engine, and developed exclusively for the LH Torana. Perfect Tune enhanced the cylinder heads, refining their finish and increasing the valve sizes to 1.95 inches for inlet and 1.61 inches for exhaust to improve airflow. On top of this was a Rochester Quadrajet carburettor, fitted with a manual choke as opposed to the normal auto choke. Additional race focus upgrades included a twin point distributor with dual coils, anti-surge baffles, a high pressure fuel pump, increased diameter fuel lines and a heavy duty radiator to further enhance cooling. The normal cast exhaust manifolds were removed and a set of HM header extractors were fitted. Holden enlisted Repco to develop the SLR 5000's V8 on their dyno, but this led to serious oil surge issues on the track, causing engine failures for multiple teams, including HDT, during 1974 testing and races. Harry Firth, then HDT boss, had designed and developed a V8 engine for the cancelled Torana GTR XU1 V8 Project 2350 and had resolved the oil surge issues on his version. Harry Firth strongly advocated for a dry sump system or effective wet sump baffling, insisting that his approach would have prevented the oil surge issues that plagued the L34. Historical accounts widely confirm that Holden management dismissed Firth's warnings and insisted on their own wet sump design for their L34, leading to the aforementioned reliability issue. The drivetrain consisted of a lighter flywheel with a reinforced clutch running through an M21 4-speed gearbox, which did struggle with the V8's torque in racing. The gearbox had the normal M21 ratios of HQ/HJ 308 4-speeds, but later cars used a closer ratio version with a 2.32:1 first gear. The Banyo type differential remained largely unchanged, featuring heavy duty fine spline axles. While slight reinforcement helped improve traction, it was still prone to snapping under race loads. To support its enhanced power, the L34 featured stiffer suspension and revised dampers with higher spring rates. For braking, the L34 used HQ 10-inch rear drum brakes and 11-inch vented front discs, both with HQ wheel stud patterns. However, one notable modification was that Holden altered the HQ PBR front calipers by plugging the bottom hose holes and adding hose entries at the top to better suit the Torana. It rode on 14x6-inch steel rally wheels. These wheels were HQ HJ GTS units, offset by an inch further outwards, and was shod with DR70 14 tyres, although many owners swapped these out for hot wire wheels, which was also done to many other Torana models. The hot wire wheels used on the LH Torana L34 were gown hinder wheels, often stamped with GH on the rim. These wheels were commonly used on L34s, particularly for racing. Some versions had "for racing purposes only" embossed on them, while others were plain. They were highly sought after and sometimes linked to famous racing teams, including those associated with Peter Brock, which also increased their popularity. Despite these refinements, some components, such as the rear drum brakes and differential, proved fragile in race conditions, leading to ongoing reliability challenges. Funnily enough, the L34 had the same 7-inch round headlights as the 4-cylinder cars, with its rubber bumper bar, rub strips, boot mat and centre console not being fitted to save weight. Given the anti-performance sentiment at the time, Holden conservatively rated the L34 at 240 horsepower, though well-tuned examples were known to push closer to 350 horsepower. Then, to make the L34 into an all-out touring car monster, you could also opt for the high output package, which would add the following to the car: a more aggressive camshaft, upgraded rocker arms and an oil cooler, special pistons and a double row timing chain ensure durability under extreme racing conditions, a 780 CFM Holley 4-barrel carburetor, where most L34s only received the Rochester Quadrajet, with a compression ratio of 9.8 to 1 and power output of 349 horsepower, giving a 0 to 60 time of 6.5 seconds, quarter mile time of 14.8 seconds, and hitting a top speed of 145 miles per hour. Holden introduced the L34 with the high output package in August 1974, establishing it as the brand's new performance flagship, designed to advance Holden's racing ambitions in a more publicly acceptable form after backlash against high-powered street cars. The L34 quickly became a key contender in Holden's battle against Ford's Falcon GTs, proving its capabilities on Australia's toughest racing circuits. At Bathurst on the 6th of October 1974, Peter Brock's L34 ran 2 minutes and 30.8 seconds, 4 seconds faster in qualifying than in the actual race. However, the race day was one of the wettest in Bathurst history, significantly affecting performance. Brock led the race by an astonishing 6 laps before mechanical failure forced him to retire during lap 118, leaving John Goss and Kevin Bartlett's Falcon XA GT hardtops to take victory, leaving the L34s in 2nd, 3rd and 4th place. Bob Forbes and Wayne Negus took 2nd place. In later interviews, Brock suggested that the issue stemmed from an order to slow down, which caused one bank of cylinders to run lean. Despite the heartbreak of 1974, the L34 enjoyed success that year, with Colin Bond's L34 Torana making its mark in the 1974 Manufacturers' Championship, securing 3 victories in the 5-round series. His success came against tough competition, including Alan Moffat's XB GT Falcon. The L34 debuted in the first round in Adelaide, where Bond claimed victory despite gearbox issues. The L34's larger V8 engine provided strong power, but its weight and handling limitations made it less competitive as compared to the XU1. Handling would go on to be improved through enhancements to the drive shaft, axle tube, suspension, brakes and wheels. At the year's end, Brock parted ways with Harry Firth's Holden dealer team, but his redemption came quickly. In 1975, despite his departure from HDT, Peter Brock returned driving a privateer gown hinder Holden Torana L34 alongside Brian Sampson, and won Bathurst by an impressive 2 laps, marking his 2nd Bathurst victory, a feat that cemented his reputation as one of Australia's greatest drivers. The Torana L34 L34 continued to make its mark on Australian motorsport, securing its legacy as a dominant competitor in the 1975 Australian Touring Car Championship. In that season, Colin Bond claimed the championship title with 60 points, followed by Murray Carter, who finished second with 44 points, driving a Falcon, and Alan Grice in an L34, who secured 39 points. The trend continued in the 1976 Australian Touring Car Championship, where Alan Moffat secured the title with 85 points, driving a Ford XB Falcon GT hardtop, while Colin Bond, piloting a Torana L34, finished second with 72 points. In 1976, Bob Morris and John Fitzpatrick won the Hardy Ferodo 1000 at Bathurst in a Torana L34, prepared by Ron Hodgson Motors, securing a well-earned victory. Despite not winning, Peter Brock still performed strongly, finishing third alongside his brother Phil Brock in a Team Brock entered Torana L34. At Bathurst, the L34 Toranas dominated the standings, occupying the top 7 positions, further proving Holden's racing pedigree. The L34 Toranas played a pivotal role in Holden's touring car success, proving that a race-focused Torana could compete at the highest level. Its success paved the way for future high-performance models, culminating in the legendary A9X, which further refined the formula and would ultimately replace the L34 on the track. With a price tag of $5,164 Australian dollars new, compared to the SLR 5000's $4,415 new, it was a significant price for the time, and being built specifically for racing, only a limited number were made, with only 263 units being produced. In the latter part of 1974, the L34 remains one of Holden's rarest homologation specials, many of which were used for motor racing, leading to its high attrition rates. But funnily enough, no big tank, although some were retrofitted at a later date. Apart from the race editions, and in an effort to increase sales, there were 2 limited build option packages offered, and these were, arriving in February 1975, the Torana G-Pack, standing for Go Pack, comparable to the HQSS, and came as a Torana S with a 3300 or 202 engine, M20 4-speed transmission, 10-inch power front disc brakes and SLR style wheels. The interior received SL style seats with SLR instruments and a 3-spoke steering wheel. Torana badging was separated and carried over from the 6-cylinder and V8 models. The G-Pack was available in only 3 colour combinations: Absinthe Yellow with Tuxedo Black stripes, Jamaican Green with Tuxedo Black stripes, and Mandarin Red with blue stripes. This exclusive G-Pack striping carried over onto the rear panel and was enhanced by G-Pack badging. Then in September 1975, the Plus 4 package arrived, designed to stimulate sales of the 4-cylinder Opel 1900 range, identified by large Plus 4 emblems on the rear guards and panel. In addition, there were Torana decals on the front apron and rear panel. The grille was a blacked out 4-cylinder type with round headlights. The Plus 4 was also offered in only 3 colours, the same as the G-Pack in fact: Absinthe Yellow, Jamaican Green and Mandarin Red, with black painted bumpers with rubber strips and painted to match the wide side stripes that ran the length of the car. Also included were black wiper arms and blades, a first for Holden. Interiors were black with SL style black front bucket seats with colour coded skunk stripes to match the car's exterior colour. Full carpeting with a clock but no tachometer. Also included was a GTS SLR type rear view mirror and 3-spoke steering wheel, running on colour coded SLR style wheels and featuring power front disc brakes for improved performance. The LH Torana, specifically the S and SL variants, was also produced in left-hand drive for export to several Asia Pacific countries. Talking of Asia Pacific countries, Holden had a presence in the Philippines beginning in the 1960s with a range of GM vehicles including EH and HQ Holdens assembled in Manila from CKD or complete knockdown kits, which resulted in some unique local adaptations. In the Philippines, the Torana was sold as a Holden 1900, Holden SL and Holden Premier. The Holden Premier was positioned as an upmarket variant of the Holden 1900, which was based on the Torana. It offered improved refinement but was not classified as a full-size luxury car. While retaining the Opel 1.9 litre engine producing 102 horsepower, it delivered a balance of performance and efficiency. New Zealand's assembly of the LH model faced a number of challenges. General Motors New Zealand had planned 6-cylinder variants, but a 60% sales tax on engines over 2.7 litres introduced amid the 1974 oil crisis halted production after only a few units. The LH was temporarily withdrawn and later reintroduced with a smaller 1.9 litre Opel engine with either manual or automatic transmission. 6-cylinder Toranas were never built in New Zealand again and became rare imports. GM also produced a local version of the Australian Plus 4 edition, though its changes were purely cosmetic, featuring bold paint, special wheel trims, black stripes and an all-black interior. The LH Torana series was produced from March 1974 to February 1976, with total sales reaching 70,184 units. This included 60,539 domestic sales, 258 fully built exports and 9,387 CKD, or completely knocked down export kits. The Holden LH Torana was a game changer for Australian motoring, marking a shift towards a larger and more sophisticated design, while retaining its performance-driven roots. Unlike its predecessors, the LH was built to accommodate both 4 and 6-cylinder plus V8 engines. The introduction of the SLR 5000 gave enthusiasts a true high-performance variant, while the L34 homologation special was specifically developed for Group C touring car racing, featuring bolt-on flared guards and race-ready enhancements. On the racetrack, the L34 had the muscle to compete but faced challenges under extreme race conditions, while its 5-litre V8 produced formidable power. Durability concerns, especially with the Banyo type differentials and oil starvation, raised concerns about its reliability at high speeds. Though not without its flaws, the LH Torana remains a classic, celebrated for its bold presence, racing pedigree and contribution to the evolution of Australian performance vehicles, and would be one step closer to the A9X. In my next episode, I'll be diving into the LX Torana, tracing the development of the SLR 5000, which would ultimately lead to the legendary A9X.